Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Sunday, February 6th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 209 days. The game against Michigan in 293 days. After talking about Jim Knowles and his defense for close to 2 full months this week, we finally got a chance to hear from Jim Knowles about that defense, his first impressions of Ohio State, and much, much more. Buckeye Scoop's X's and O's guru Ross Fulton had some very interesting takeaways from that conversation. He joins me now to discuss that and more. Ross, thanks for being here.
Happy to be here, Tom.
So I guess we need to start on the back end of the defense with the safeties, because Knowles really kind of spelled some things out about how he envisions things working and how the different safety roles all kind of fit together. So let's start with that position and the spot that we have kind of called the slot corner or the cover safety over the last couple of years. What is the primary responsibility there in Knowles' defense, and which players to you might fit best in that role?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a pass-first position, defending the pass first. You have to have someone there who is going to be able to play man coverage on a slot receiver or, carry that receiver vertically. He will move that person around, but as Knowles himself said, he generally tries to keep that slot corner, cover safety, for lack of a better term, the nickel, how about we use, out of the run fit. And so, part of the problem last year is that for Ohio State, when they changed defense, is that they had a similar concept, but they struggled to keep that guy out of the run fit. It takes work, but it's a way that a lot of modern defenses are going in terms of playing the pass first, and then you do things in the run fit to keep that guy out of it. But so essentially, you're thinking again of a nickel corner there.
All right, so next up is the boundary safety position. What is that position primarily going to be tasked with under Knowles this fall? And then which guy or guys do you see potentially fitting best there?
Yeah, so, again, obviously to go back to the nickel, I mean, Tanner McAllister came from Oklahoma State. He started there the last couple of years with Knowles. Knowles had glowing things to say about him this week. He called him basically an NFL player that they're lucky to have for a year. So I would be surprised if he is not starting at that position, given those comments. But yeah, so boundary safety, again, it's actually pretty similar to what they had Ronnie Hickman doing once Matt Barnes took over the defense. So that guy, a lot of times he is your +1 against the run to the boundary or to the weak side. And so, we saw a lot of that with Hickman last year, whether they were, when they were playing quarters and he would come down on run action, or, if you rotate into a single high coverage, like cover 1 or cover 3, he comes down into the box. So again, as Knowles said, you're looking for someone who is going to be a little bit better, more stout against the run. That person is going to be inserting against the run. They're not going to be someone who is as often matched up in man coverage as the corners or the cover safeties would be.
So that sounds like that's you get Tanner McAllister in one of those spots, Ronnie Hickman in another one of those spots. The third deep safety spot is the field safety spot. By process of elimination, that should be the deep spot, right? Who fits there?
Yeah, and so I mean, again, I would think of it as like two high safeties, right? You start just like Ohio State was doing. So I mean, they're both deep, right? So like the boundary safety's deep. He may rotate in the box, but yeah. So Hickman. Obviously, that's where Court Williams played as well. I mean, I think you'll have to see. To me, it remains to be seen whether Court Williams fits best there, or maybe it could be a will linebacker. They got lots of linebackers, so it's not an uncrowded room. But then you can move to what the field safety. Knowles calls it the bandit. He has terms for all three spots, but that is he calls it the captain of the defense, so to speak. And again, so that's much more of your traditional deep safety. He is capping a lot of routes to the field. So again, your standard offense these days in college football is a spread 11 personnel, which means you've got 3 wide receivers and a tight end. So, generally speaking, you'll have one side, maybe with 2 wide receivers, let's say to the wide side of the field, then a tight end and another receiver to the boundary. So, you're basically playing 3 over 2 over the outside receiver and the slot receiver, with your corner, your nickel, and then your field safety. So a lot of times they'll run Knowles likes to run bracket, for instance. So like that nickel and the field safety will work in tandem to literally create a bracket on the slot receiver, and then the other one comes off to play the run or to play to rob the outside route. So again, that's more of a pass first person. And similarly, Josh Proctor, if he returns from injury, Bryson Shaw, that's basically what he played once Proctor went out and Matt Barnes took over last year. I think the other person that's two other people that are sort of hanging out there in terms of their positional fit are Lathan Ranson and Cam Martinez, because they moved them back and forth last year between that nickel cover safety spot and that free safety, or what Knowles calls the bandit. So I think it sort of, to me, maybe Martinez is a nickel and Ranson is a field safety, but I don't know. I think that'll sort of have to shake itself out.
All right, so that covers the 3 safety spots. Now, you talked on our Ask the Insiders board about how what Knowles likes to do means you're likely to see a lot more of what you called weak rotation. So what does weak rotation mean, and why do you do it?
Well, so as the name implies, you're literally rotating the secondary weak. Or again, so let's go back to our example I just used of, your stereotypical spread set has, your slot and one receiver to the wide field, a tight end, and a single receiver then to the boundary, one running back. So you're rotating weak for a couple to equate numbers against the run, because otherwise you're outnumbered to the boundary. But weak rotation really, it obviously was not invented by Nick Saban, but I think that Nick Saban has made it sort of what everyone does, in the sense of he plays cover 3 weak if he's going to play single high. And so again, in that situation, the boundary safety, or let's use Ronnie Hickman, is rotating down towards the tight end. You're rotating the field safety from the field over to the middle of the field. And so you can, in your mind, you can see they're literally moving weak. Cover 4 is another really example. Even though you're in split safeties, you're really rotated weak, again, because how you're having the boundary safety be the more aggressive one against the run. And so it's really just a matter of equating numbers, because again, like Knowles does, Kirby Smart and Georgia do now, the passing game is, points come out of explosive plays. Explosive plays are easier to create out of the passing game. And so you have to stop the pass first. And so the goal, again, we go back to the nickel, not being in the run fit. The goal is to, first things first, limit explosive plays out of the passing game. And then you work the run fits off of that. And so the weak rotating weak is a way to both allow you to defend the pass, and by getting that boundary safety involved against the run, re-equate numbers, particularly to the short side of the field.
So, that's interesting, because that's a little bit of a philosophical shift. Ohio State's defense has always seemed to be, much more, well, we have to stop the run first. That's kind of the traditional football mindset, and it's something you've kind of heard the coaching staff talk about a little bit in recent years. But, that sounds like that may be a little bit of a philosophical shift this year. I guess the bigger question is how different what they're going to run this year schematically is going to be from what they did last year before that. Because, obviously they're hoping the results look very different, but is this a total overhaul of the defense, or is this something less of that, and it's kind of, more minor tweaks to certain things, but, the whole, you're not completely stripping it down to the studs and starting over?
Yeah, I would not consider it a strip down of the studs. I would say in some ways it is very similar. Like what we just talked about with the 3 safety positions, that very easily maps on to what Ohio State was doing last year, right? So in that case, particularly once Barnes took over, all those 3 positions are the same, what they were looking for out of them. And so then it's a case of basically doing it better. Knowles talked about having a structure and a system, and then you can have answers and you can disguise better. I think within the particulars of some of the coverage schemes, it's different. But, I think that's pretty similar. Where it's different is what you just said is the concept of the single high defense is the traditional 4-3, as you said, everyone has a gap against the run. So you're gapped out against the run. You're going to force teams to throw it to the outside. This is not that. So Knowles is okay not being perfectly having everyone for a gap. Instead, you have run fits. And so that's what we've talked about in the past. It's actually more different for the front in some ways than the back end, because, the defensive line has to do things if you're down a gap to, based on, for instance, offensive line movement, to cancel out gaps, and then they want to spill the football outside and have the linebackers and safeties clean it up. And so, like, for instance, if you see the offensive guard block down, the defensive end might shoot down a gap and come inside. So it looks like the B gap's open between the guard and the tackle, but then now suddenly that defensive end who was lined up outside of the tackle is now coming down into it. Now you're spilling the football out again to your back seven.
So I guess that's kind of related to, in some ways, to a question I was going to ask you about something I saw this week, which the idea that defensive ends just don't worry about contain in Jim Knowles' system. They can just rush. You want to go inside? That's fine. You want to go outside? That's fine. It's just like YOLO. They can go wherever they want, whenever they want, without fear of losing contain. Is that what you've seen from his defense? Is that what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like their defensive ends don't generally play with contain, as I said, because they're trying to spill the football, which means you're trying to force it to go east-west. So like contain's kind of like an older idea where you want to box the football inside. Everyone has a gap. Now you spill it. Now I will say Ohio State's spilled a lot the last few years, so that's not entirely new to them. Now there are issues with sometimes they would spill and no one would be there to spill too because of problems in the design of the defense. But that's like a whole nother story. But no, so as he talked about the Leo position, a lot of times like what he does with that guy is like put him over a guard to like take out the pulling guard, So like a lot of times like that guy's kind of doing like yeoman's work again, like to spill the football. So I would actually say the opposite, at least on rundowns or standard downs, like, he'll play with like a heavy 5 technique, which means like that guy's more like head up over the tackle. And again, you're like trying to control, I'm using my hands, so like control the tackle and then like stick your head to the inside if the ball's coming that way. Because again, he actually wants the defensive line to, I would say, do more grunt work at times, for lack of a better term, to then spill the football against the run. Now, against the pass, it may be different, and he may give people more of a two-way go. And, so I do agree in the sense that he's not going to ask them to hold contain, but they do have other responsibilities where it's not just like rush up the field like it's the Pro Bowl, and, it's like no one cares if someone runs the football. Like, because you're like, again, defending the pass first and often down a gap, you actually need your defensive line to be more sound in their technique.
All right. Well, appreciate the insight on all that stuff. This is, I'm sure, something we're going to talk about a number of times before the season actually kicks off. We do know the spring game is set for Saturday, April 16th now, so we have a little bit more idea when spring ball is coming. We will have plenty to talk about between now and then with Ross on future shows. So, Ross, thank you as always for joining me. If you want more insight from Ross, you can find it all at BuckeyeScoop.com. We have a ton of great insight from him on our Ask the Insiders board. We have done a load of shows. Just search Ross's name on YouTube if you want to hear all Ross's thoughts on lots of thoughts on Ohio State's defense last year, but lots of thoughts, if you prefer good news, lots of thoughts on Ohio State's offense last year. Just search Ross's name on YouTube, or just go to our channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop, and then search for his name there. You will find a ton of content from Ross that will make you a much smarter football fan. So hope you guys enjoyed that show. We will be back with another episode, of course, tomorrow. But in the meantime, you can find all of our great podcasts wherever you're listening to this one: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, you name it, we're there. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all those shows. You can leave us a 5-star rating and review, which we do appreciate. You can also subscribe to our shows. All of our good shows: Buckeye Weekly, Big Me Kickoff, Gives at the Bank, Around the Oval, all those great shows. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.